15 poor man's meals from the Great Depression you can still make today. Close your eyes for a moment. The year is 1932. The cupboards are nearly empty. A cold wind rattles through the cracks of a wooden house. And yet, out of almost nothing, families created meals that were warm, filling, and unbelievably cheap. Some of these Depression-era recipes were so clever that you can still make them today, for just a few cents. In fact, a few of these poor man's meals are so simple, you could cook them tonight or tomorrow, and actually save money on your next grocery bill. We're stepping back into America's hardest years to uncover 15 forgotten recipes that turn scraps into survival, and survival into stories. And wait until you see the dessert that used almost nothing at all, just water, sugar, and a bit of flour. 1. Hoover stew. Named after President Herbert Hoover, this dish was born in soup kitchens and crowded homes. Pasta, canned tomatoes, corn, maybe a bit of sausage if you were lucky, all tossed together into one bubbling pot. How it was made? Boil a pot of macaroni until soft. Add a can of diced tomatoes, a handful of corn, and chopped hot dogs or sausage if you had them. Simmer until everything blended into a thick, hearty stew. Even today, you can make Hoover stew with one box of pasta and a couple of cans, and feed a family for just a few dollars. 2. Water pie. No milk, no fruit. Just water, sugar, a bit of flour and butter in a crust. How it was made? An unbaked pie crust was filled with warm water mixed with sugar and flour. A few pats of butter floated on top. Baked slowly, the flour thickened the liquid into a soft, custard-like filling. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you can recreate the dessert that turned nothing into something sweet. 3. Mulligan stew, hobo stew. Along the railway tracks, small fires burned at night. Hobos and drifters shared what little they had: carrots, potatoes, beans, maybe a scrap of meat. How it was made. Everything went into one pot over an open fire. No set recipe, just whatever the group could find or trade that day. You can still make mulligan stew today with a few leftover vegetables and one cheap cut of meat, and feed everyone for pennies. 4th, Depression, cake, no butter, no eggs, no milk. How it was made. Raisins were boiled with sugar, water, and spices to make a rich syrup. Flour, baking soda, and a little oil were mixed in to create a moist cake batter. Baked until golden, it tasted far more luxurious than the ingredients suggested. For under a few dollars, you can still make this miracle cake tonight. 5th, poor man's meal. Potatoes, onions, a few slices of cheap sausage or hot dogs. How it was made. Potatoes and onions were sliced thin and fried slowly in a pan until soft and browned. Hot dog slices were added at the end for flavor. 3 ingredients, a whole skillet of food. Even now, you can make this for a couple of dollars and feed a family. 6. Bulldog gravy. Imagine scraping the last bit of fat from a pan, mixing it with flour and water, pouring it over bread or potatoes. How it was made. Fat or bacon drippings were whisked with a spoonful of flour, then thinned with water or milk to make a simple gravy. Served over stale bread or mashed potatoes, it turns scraps into a meal. All you need is flour and a little butter or fat to make this Depression comfort food tonight. 7. Dandelion salad. When there's no money for groceries, you look to the ground. Literally, fresh dandelion greens were foraged, washed, and tossed with vinegar or bacon grease. Sometimes a hard-boiled egg was sliced on top if you had one to spare. Today, you can do the same with garden greens or spinach for almost nothing. 8. Spaghetti with carrots and white sauce. First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt promoted this recipe during the worst years of the Depression. Spaghetti was boiled until very soft. Carrots were sliced and boiled until tender. A simple sauce of flour, butter, and milk was poured over both. A box of pasta and a couple of carrots, and you've got a filling meal for under $2. 9. Vinegar pie, vinegar cobbler. No apples, no problem. An unbaked crust was filled with a mix of vinegar, sugar, water, and spices. When baked, the tang mimicked the flavor of fruit pie. With just pantry staples, you can still bake this depression dessert for pennies. 10th, prune pudding. Eleanor Roosevelt served it at the White House. Prunes were stewed in water with sugar until soft, then mashed and thickened into a simple pudding. Dried fruit is still cheap, and for just a few coins, you can taste history. 11th, cornbread in milk. Leftover cornbread was crumbled into a bowl and covered with milk or buttermilk. Syrup or sugar made it sweet. Bacon grease made it savory. A zero-waste breakfast then, and still one of the cheapest ways to start the day. 12th, mock apple pie, Ritz pie. How it was made. Ritz crackers were layered in a pie dish and covered with a hot syrup of sugar, lemon, and cinnamon. Baked with a top crust, it tricked the tongue into thinking it was apple pie. For less than $5, you can bake a full pie with no fruit at all. 13. Cornmeal mush. Cornmeal was whisked into boiling water with a pinch of salt and cooked into a thick, creamy porridge. Served with syrup or gravy, it was breakfast, lunch, or dinner. At under 50 cents a serving, it's still one of the cheapest hot meals you can make. 14. Bean and weenie casserole. Canned beans were mixed with chopped hot dogs and baked until bubbling. Sometimes a little flour or leftover potatoes were added to stretch it further. With one can of beans and a few sausages, you can still feed a family for a couple of dollars. 15. Egg drop soup, shock or depression. Style. How it was made. Hot water or broth was brought to a simmer. A beaten egg was poured in slowly, forming ribbons. Stale bread often floated on top to make it filling. With one egg and some boiling water, you can make this classic for under $1. These weren't just recipes. They were acts of survival, of love, of turning almost nothing into just enough. And here's the thing, some of these meals aren't just history, they're still practical today. You can make Hoover stew, Poorman's meal, or even water pie this week, and spend less than you would on a single fast food dinner. Which one will you try? And which one should stay forgotten? Leave your answer in the comments, and don't forget to share this video to keep these stories alive.